All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and it's the second we are getting back towards trading full time. I am going to show you a few things today. I got a little bit of Bitcoin news, a little bit of expectations for what we could or couldn't see next year, and then I'm going to just go through the charts because it's time to get back to work. It's time to start trading again full time. So I'm going to be going through all the technical analysis. I'll show you everything I'm looking at. I'll show you any trades that I've got open. I'll just refresh those. They have already been documented on the channel, but I'll go back and refresh you on those. I'll show you what I'm looking at, what I'm expecting to see, and what I am looking to get into as the next couple of weeks unfold. I want to start as I mean to go on. Okay, so just a quick reminder, the channel is going to consist of three main buckets of information, three main content buckets, and these are the reset, preparation, preparedness, news, updates. These are Bitcoin and crypto news and education. And then I'm also going to be documenting my trades live. I'm going to be calling them out weeks in advance, or at least days in advance. I'm going to declare publicly when I take a long. I'm going to show you the stop loss. I'm going to show you when I close the trade, and I'm going to call out when I get stopped out. I'm going to let you know every time I get stopped out, so you can see every time I'm right and every time I'm wrong, because I'm trying to uphold a higher standard for YouTube traders. Because I think there's a real problem with a lot of crypto influencers, a lot of trading influencers. They say they trade, they might call out and do some technical analysis and say, if we go above here, I'll get long. But nobody really does this in real time. Nobody really admits when they're wrong. Nobody really shows you every single trade. Nobody really calls them out ahead of time. Instead, what they do is they say, oh, look at this profit I've got open. Well, that's fine, but what about all the times you were wrong? What about all the losses that you take as a trader? I feel like this part of trading, this real world, is missing from a lot of YouTube influencers. It's very easy as a creator to just say you're going to go long and then wait a while and then say, oh, I profited from that trade. But did you actually call it on the day that you opened it? Did you show where your stop loss was? And so this is the sort of thing I want to uphold, a higher standard on YouTube. I want to show you that it can be done, and I want to show you exactly what it looks like in the real world. The core beliefs of the channels: there's going to be no shilling of altcoins. I'm going to keep altcoin trading to a minimum. I don't really like altcoins. I just think they drain liquidity from Bitcoin. I think that liquidity rightly belongs to Bitcoin, and a lot of these altcoins, in fact almost all of them, just aren't even solving real world problems. I think they're just in the way. I understand the attraction, especially if you've got a low net worth, you don't have a lot of disposable income or whatever, then I get it. Like, you just want to put your money somewhere and see it 1000x. But the reality is, how successful have you been at that? The answer for most people is highly unsuccessful. The way to succeed as a trader and as an investor is slowly over time. Slow and consistent profit is way better than just making 1000x out of nowhere and then having a 99% crash the following week. The second thing in terms of beliefs is there'll be no sponsorship nonsense from me. I don't want my face, even though this is my face, okay? I don't want this face associated with these horrible energy drinks that you see all over YouTube, or male grooming products, or any of that stuff. So there's going to be none of that. And lastly, Bitcoin is hope and freedom. Okay, it really is. Like I said, there's so many of these altcoins that really aren't solving any real world problems. And I understand the attractiveness because people want the big gains and the big pumps or whatever. You do you at the end of the day. I think Bitcoin is humanity's one hope, one chance at freedom. I think it's the one hope we have at separating money from state. If Bitcoin fails, that doesn't mean other altcoins won't succeed and there won't be other New World Order coins or these new ISO 20022 coins. I'm sure some of those are going to be integrated, but they do not represent, in my opinion, they do not represent a positive future for humans in terms of tyranny, control, privacy. Bitcoin is the only one that offers these things, and that is why I focus on Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin to succeed, not so that I can profit from Bitcoin, but so that we don't have to all be forced to accept CBDCs and tyranny and control and complete domination over our lives by authoritarian central banks. So as we say goodbye to 2022, Bitcoin has just had its fourth red quarter in a row, and this is for the first time ever, as you can see here. Also, Bitcoin makes more history because this is the first yearly bearish engulfing candle ever, as you can see here. This doesn't change the fact, and it doesn't stop the fact, that the adoption of Bitcoin is still roughly on pace with the internet user adoption, and the purple dots above are the growth model for mobile phone users per 100 people. So as you can see, we are, even if we sit underneath this and are conservative for a bit, we are still roughly tracing the adoption of mobile phones and internet usage. And by the end of 2040, we should see Bitcoin up in the millions to tens of millions of dollars per coin neighborhood, assuming we can continue to be adopted at some rate close to what we have seen historically. So for those with a longer term horizon, for those with a longer term outlook, I think there are very, very positive things to come for Bitcoin. And I certainly, as I said at the start, hope that Bitcoin can be humanity's one chance at freedom. We're starting to see things like Biden signing a $1.7 trillion government spending bill. So the printers are coming on slowly but surely. This number here equates to 103 million Bitcoin. Of course, the supply has been hard capped at 21 million Bitcoin. So there is plenty of room for growth in Bitcoin, particularly if they continue to spend and spend and spend and start to print more and more and more, as I expect to see over the coming year or two. Billionaire Tim Draper here says his 250k prediction by 2022 obviously was off by quite a bit. It hasn't made it there yet. It says certainly before the halving. So he is sticking with this idea, and the halving is only 470 days away now. So that puts us around March or April of 2024. So if we can hit 250k before that, that is a pretty good rate of return in my books at least. Americans are only able to save just 2.3% of their paychecks, which is the smallest percentage since 2005, as you can see here. Yet the amount of cash sitting in checkable deposits has continued to rise, surpassing 5 trillion in the third quarter. So what is going on here? Well, ultimately, it's likely that they have been selling assets, like selling their stocks and holding the cash on the sidelines because they don't want to be in risk assets at the moment. And it begs the question, are the Fed and the banks and the government chasing people into cash to set the stage for a Russian banking hack? Periodically throughout last year, I showed plenty of videos in which the banking system was seen to be increasingly fragile. We know that we've got everybody's favorite three-letter organizations talking about things like blackouts and cyber attacks. So is this something that we could expect to see? I will, of course, continue to update on this as we progress through the year. In terms of the equities, Bob Lucas, the king of cycles, is expecting us to have another either an equal low or a lower low to drop down into this weekly cycle. That would be the completion of 1, 2, 3, 4 daily cycles forming a weekly cycle, and therefore we should expect at least 3 to 7 weeks of upside. And according to Bob Lucas, he actually thinks that we're going to be ending the bear market coming out of this weekly cycle low. So does that mean that potentially in the worst case scenario, we've only got a couple more months of downside before we can actually turn around and say goodbye to this bear market? Quite possibly. One thing I was thinking when I saw this from Bob was I was wondering why he seemingly has ruled out the notion that this could be a half cycle low. So of course the dominant trend is down. We've got lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. So therefore it's kind of reasonable to expect that we would have to complete this weekly cycle low by progressing further to the downside. But I do also think, and I was thinking to myself, there's a chance that this is going to form a half cycle low, and then we could pop up here and drop into a weekly cycle low much higher up. And you can see here from Kush that he actually kind of sees the same thing. However, he's not using cycles, he's using fib levels and Elliott wave. So ultimately, we could expect one or two of these scenarios to play out. And I know what you might be thinking, oh, well done, Camel, we're either going up or down. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. I don't know at this point. We need to let some candles unfold. I think this would be the path of most pain, but I also have known and followed Bob Lucas long enough to know that he is right more often than he's wrong. It will be interesting to see if we can get a bounce out of here, whether it fails soon like he is predicting, or whether we can start to get real bullish real quickly. And if that is the case, then I would not at all be surprised to see the record amount of puts that I have been consistently showing on this channel throughout last year finally getting scorched. And one last point to make about this before I go on to the technicals is that this target, 6,500, is not actually that far, even though this is based off of Elliott wave and fibs. This is not that far away from my original sort of melt up thesis where I said that I would expect around 6,000 on the S&P if this was going to happen. So does that mean we could start to get really bullish really quickly? Does that mean the whole melt up thing is cancelled, or maybe perhaps it's just been pushed out by a few months? So I'm not saying I think this is going to happen. I'm completely neutral at the moment. I'm going to wait to see more candles to figure this out. But one of the key signs for me to look for is if we don't take out this low, if we hold this sort of basing structure, even if it's just a retest rather than an undercut, then I would say it's going to get very bullish very quickly, because this is just not what you'd expect to see from a hyper bearish market. In a hyper bearish market, you would expect us to undercut these lows significantly, and then you could even argue that perhaps there's another undercut to come after that. But one thing to look for, one thing I'm looking for, is if we do not undercut these lows, then I think we can confidently and comfortably say that we are going to be leaving behind the bear market of 2022 in 2023. The dollar came up a little bit shy of my target of 100 to 102 by the end of the year, but it does still seem to be on its way down to a touch of this blue trend line, which goes all the way back here, as you can see. So I don't really expect much from the dollar apart from perhaps a test of this line. Then a counter trend bounce of some sort would not be unexpected at all. But ultimately, I do believe this is topped and we've got significant downside for the dollar ahead of us in 2023, which historically has been very good for risk assets in Bitcoin and gold. I still have my geo position. I've said this multiple times. The plan all along for this was to watch it chop around inside this box, and then when it breaks out, to take a long above that breakout, put a stop somewhere down here. I will also move the original stop loss up to there, and therefore we are allowing the profit from the first trade to finance the risk on the second trade, and potentially we could even look to repeat this 3, 4 or 5 times as we progress up, assuming Geo is indeed going to do that. So one day at a time, one step at a time. For now, waiting for a breakout above the top of this blue box here. Following the rate hikes that we saw at the last Fed meeting, the US 2-year yield has quite clearly broken out, as you can see. So this is going to be putting pressure on risk assets. And the same is true of the 10-year yield. It is broken out of this trend line here, as you can see, and we are now potentially on our way to some resistance. This will be a very key thing that I'm keeping my eye on, the chart of truth, the 10-year yield. If we can get rejected off of here, then again, I would expect the bullishness to return to risk assets quite quickly. However, if we instead get some sort of breakout and go, then this is going to put pressure on everything. Precious metals, Bitcoin, risk assets, the lot. So I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on what happens in this little pocket here. Bitcoin continues to kind of do what we expected it to do once we realized we were leaving behind the day 35 high and we could not confirm the Wyckoff spring, this big accumulation spring hit period here. Then it became quite obvious that we needed to drop down into a cycle low. So we're currently not far away. We're currently around 4 days away from a perfect day 60 low. Is this going to be a little pump up to trap the longs and then drop down into that? Quite possibly. Remember, this could come as late as around the 12th of January. So there's still a little bit of a window here. I am looking for a deep pull down, as you can see by this yellow line. Once we get a swing out of there, that will be the trigger for a long from me. There'll be a tighter stop loss than this, I imagine. So this is my first trade that I want to call out ahead of time. I'm planning to buy the swing low for Bitcoin when we get evidence of one show up. I expect this to occur anytime in the next 10 days, and I will be looking to long out of here. I won't really become interested in the altcoins until Bitcoin can confirm that it has indeed put in a cycle low, but I think that's going to come pretty soon, like I said, within the next sort of 10 days. I carried over a gold trade, which I'm still holding, as you can see here, and the same is true of silver. I also carried over a silver trade, so I still have both of those. I'm kind of, for silver, I'm looking for like $27 to $29 up in this neighborhood. That would be perfect. So can we push this trade all the way up there? If it can get there, that remains to be seen. You could draw a rough line under here to say that this would be like my line in the sand. If we were to convincingly break down from here, then this position will be closed. But for now, long and strong continue to push, and the same is true of gold as well. In terms of the gold target, I'm in an ideal world, I think it can make 2050 up all the way at the top of this range here. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. For now, I see no reason not to continue to push this trade, and these are the types of trades that if it can get up here, this will give me the biggest kickstart to the year. This 1 or 2 of these trades a year is really all you need as a swing trader. So it is really important not to jump off too early, not to be looking at the open profit and thinking, oh, should I have taken it? Shouldn't I have taken it? You have to wait for a true technical reason to exit the trade, and one simply has not shown up just yet. The FTSE 100 is doing some interesting things, isn't it? We had its breakout, then a retest with a trap that recovered, and now we've got this purple trend line which we seem to be breaking out and trying to retest. So if we can resume off of here convincingly, this will become a long for me wherever it forms, and I'll put the stop maybe below these lows here. So I'm lining that up. That's another trade I want to call out ahead of time. If I can see some convincing push off of this over the coming couple of sessions, then expect me to tell you I've gone long the UK 100. We got more conflicting information and more conflicting data because I've put this VIX hedge on. I did this a while ago. You can see this would have been all the way back here on the 14th of December. It's done a whole lot of nothing. This does not speak to one of these big sort of major crashes or one of these big major pullbacks that you get from the stock market. It does not speak to peak fear. It certainly doesn't look anything like the pandemic crash back here. So something is lying, isn't it? either the stock market is lying and it's not as bearish as the price action would indicate, or the VIX is lying and everything should be a lot more scary than it is right now. Again, for a bear market rally, this doesn't really look like that, does it? This looks much more like it's about to recover and break out to all-time highs. So that remains to be seen. Jumping into the Dow, I've still got this trade open. It's not far below break even at the moment. So, but again, breakout, retest, retest, retest. We're still holding this line. So again, it all comes down to, can it push off of here? If it can, then I think that could become a nice entry if you're not in already. It's just a trade idea. I continue to push this trade. We are, of course, out of the NASDAQ at the moment. We took the profit. We got in somewhere around here last year and took the profit when we got a breakdown of these lows, I think. So we captured a little bit of this move. That's not too bad. The question is, can this get bullish, or has this got to roll over and make new lows? Again, I don't know. I'm just going to have to let the market tell me. But particularly if we can start to push up here and then perhaps hold and break out, that will become a long from me. But that is potentially a little while away just yet. The S&P 500, again, we took the profit from this trade. We got in quite near the bottom down here, and then we jumped out somewhere around here. So that's not bad. But nobody can argue the fact that we do have a failed cycle here. We came up, we came down, and we took out that cycle low. So that should tell us that even if we do get a counter trend bounce from here, it's likely to be rejected whilst we drop down into that next cycle low. How low that cycle low comes, which is due around the beginning of February, is anybody's guess. So it could form all the way up here, or it could form all the way down here. Nobody knows. But one thing I'll be looking for is if we can start to maybe get a bounce and then roll over into this cycle low, then perhaps that could be a short from up in this neighborhood down into that daily cycle low before flipping long at the cycle low. So again, a few more candles to let me know what's going on. There's a few trade ideas, but patience is a swing trader's best tool. It's the best tool I've got in my arsenal, is the ability to sit on my hands and wait for the trades to come to me. I'm not going to try and jump in here and go long and hope that the market's going to go up, or short hoping that the market's going to go down. We're going to wait till I've got a nice clean setup, and then we will get involved. So in the meantime, I've showed you the trades I've still got open. I've showed you the ones I'm interested in. And as the year begins to progress, and as the year begins to unfold, and as I begin to get a better read on what is going on, I will flip from neutral to either bearish or bullish, depending on what the structure tells me to do so. So if you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're not already. Turn the notifications on if you want to see how I deal with these markets in real time as a pro swing trader. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I honestly wish you all of the success you could ever dream of this year. I'm pretty sure this year is going to be a massive year. So I'm looking forward to capitalizing on that. I'm looking forward to growing the channel, and I'm looking forward to growing my trading account once more. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Bitcoin as adoption continues. That is my expectation, and my expectation is that the price is going to get quite bullish quite quickly. So, of course, that remains to be seen, but for now, I remain optimistic, I remain positive. I wish you all the best in life. In the meantime, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.